Jeb Bush visited the U.S.-Mexico border Monday, and during a news conference, he responded to accusations that he'd been insensitive to Latino voters by using the term anchor babies last week. He said that he was actually referring to something called maternity tourism.
My background, my life, the fact that I'm immersed in the immigrant experience, this is ludicrous for the Clinton campaign and others to suggest that somehow I'm using a derogatory term. What I was talking about was the specific case of fraud being committed where there's organized efforts, and frankly, it's more related to Asian people coming into our country, having children, in that organized efforts, taking advantage of a noble concept with his birthright citizenship. I support the 14th Amendment. Nothing about what I've said should be viewed as derogatory towards immigrants at all. This is all how politics plays. And by the way, I think we need to take a step back and chill out a little bit as it relates to the political correctness that somehow you have to be scolded every time you say something. It's not fair to be taken out of context. That's the nature of politics, but I just don't think that this is appropriate.
Major Garrett joins us now. Major, good to see you. You know, Jeb Bush refers to it there as fraud, but in fact, it's not criminal. CBS News has done its own reporting of this industry, had profiled a Chinese couple who had spent $27,000 to a Chinese agency that worked on visas and medical care and accommodations, all perfectly legal as a way to come here and have a child in the United States and have that child be born an American citizen.
Right. So it's troublesome to Jeb Bush and other Republican primary and caucus voters, but as you said, Contessa, it is not illegal, it is not fraudulent, not by the law and not by practice. And let's be honest with ourselves about the impracticality of trying to police this. What would you do at the customs agency, let's say, for example, in Los Angeles, where this maternity tourism does exist? Do you stop every pregnant woman on an international flight coming into Los Angeles and asking them what their intentions are in America? I don't think that's very practical. What's happened to Jeb Bush here is two things. One, he likes to talk about his experience and his knowledge about the underlying policy and his familiarity within his own family to the immigrant experience in America. Fine. Yet, reporters like me and others are very sensitive to when Jeb Bush uses terminology that in some respects has been used first by Donald Trump in the context of this primary. Why? Because Jeb Bush has in the past been associated with groups who have specifically told Republicans, don't use this terminology, in this case, anchor babies. Why? Because it's considered inflammatory or offensive or borderline racist. So Jeb Bush can talk about his history and can talk about how political correctness is running amok, but he does have two sides of this history with this issue. Both a familiarity and an advocacy not to use the terminology he's using now. So I would argue to Jeb Bush and any candidate who tries to tell reporters to chill out, well, maybe you ought to understand how politics actually operates.
Today, he really tried to distance himself from Donald Trump's immigration proposals. I want to just play part of that.
Mr. Trump's plans are not grounded in conservative principles. It would cost hundreds of billions of dollars. It's not realistic. It won't be implemented. And we need border security to be able to deal with getting this country back on track. So I'm not going to get into the issues of what he said and I said. The simple fact is that his proposal is unrealistic. It will cost hundreds of billions of dollars. It will violate people's civil liberties. It will create friction with our third largest trading partner that's not necessary. And I think he's wrong about this.
In the meantime, a governor who's handling a lot of immigration issues, illegal immigration issues, Rick Perry of Texas, is having trouble even getting any skin in the game. In fact, we just heard from his Iowa guy on the ground, the head of his campaign there, has stepped away because Perry can no longer pay his staffers.
Right,
so,
right.
You know, it's interesting the way that this issue is defining some campaigns and then leaving other guys just out in the cold.
Well, sure. I mean, centrality to an issue, as Rick Perry does have, he has real-life experience as the governor of Texas dealing with this issue, being a visible opponent of President Obama's immigration policies, would, in theory, give him a leg up. But you have to have so many other things in your campaign working for you. You have to have money and people who are willing to back your money with hard campaign dollars. And Rick Perry simply cannot find those right now because people don't believe he is going to end up in the top tier of the Republican finishers in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, or Nevada. And so they're taking their money and directing it elsewhere. And when you don't have money, you can't pay people. When you can't pay people, guess what? You have a few volunteers, but not many.